Welcome everybody to Coach. I'm co-founder Samuel Barcliffe of the VA Titans. Joining us today we have special guest Bruce Pearl of the Mustangs, also featuring Coach Corey of the VA Titans and our lovely Miss Allison.
All right, well, I'm going to tell us a little bit more about Coach Bruce, and then we're going to get the conversation going. Bruce Pearl is the head of the Virginia Beach Mustangs, which is a youth Pop Warner football organization in the area. Bruce and his brother are continuing the legacy began by their father back in 1966 when he founded the then Woodstock Mustangs. The organization serves over 300 youth athletes in both football and cheerleading, and this is Coach Bruce's second time joining us on Coached, this time face-to-face. Welcome, Bruce.
Thank you.
Welcome.
All right,
Welcome.
We're ready to hear these different perspectives because Coached is a show about perspective, right? So I found a quote that I wanted to read you guys to get the conversation kicked off and kind of have you react to that quote. So Kobe Bryant has said, "Our job is to try to inspire the creativity inside of our children so they can think through how to problem solve situations. When I coach my daughter's team, it's not about giving them answers, it's about giving them questions." Kobe Bryant. What do you guys think about that?
Rest in peace, Kobe.
I mean, definitely he was beyond his years, profound in so many ways. So, I mean, I take it for exactly what he said, man. I don't want to interpret it any differently.
Well, how do you feel tasked with that? Not giving them answers, but questions. How does that come through in coaching?
It helps them process situations that they're in. They need questions so they can understand how to answer it. Being an athlete, you gotta, as a coach, you have to give players questions to give them understanding of what they're doing. You know, why did you make that play? Take me through that. That way, as a coach, you can kind of process what they're thinking at the time. So, I definitely agree with what being said with that one.
In our program, I agree partly I don't. We think when they're first starting, we like to give them a few more answers, try to make it a little bit more simple for them, and then as they advance, we try to throw in a few more questions. We kind of equate it to like a math teacher. You know, a math teacher is going to teach them stuff, but then they're also going to come back and ask the questions. And so they're going to recite what they've learned, but then you're going to start asking them some stuff that they got to figure out. So we kind of handle it. We agree, but, you know, maybe slightly different approach.
Makes a lot of sense.
I think it definitely leads to what the overall thing I think we're trying to accomplish, and that's the creativity of the player. And so I get where he's coming with trying to create the questions. You kind of want to spark the interest. And you need that because when they don't have interest, they want to do something else. And as coaches, we know sometimes we see the player and we know it might take a while, but they really would love the sport. They just kind of got to stick with it because there's a lot of things about it we know just from being in particular sports from beginning to the end. Maybe, for example, T-ball or baseball overall. T-ball starts off as T-ball, progresses to coach pitch, then it progresses to kid pitch, then, you know, fast pitch, and then you get to middle school, high school. But the whole point of what I'm saying is that game progressed. That game went from you doing T-ball, there's no catcher. So there might have been a player that's on that bench saying, oh, T-ball's so boring. But as it progresses, you might now get that opportunity to play catcher. You didn't even know that was going to exist. You get what I mean? So I think providing that question, it allows a lot of creativity too. And I mean, I think that it's the toughest part of the coach because sometimes coaches want to do so much, but we kind of, me and you had that discussion earlier this week during some of our games, and we were like, man, it sucks to kind of be the coach because sometimes you got to do things that you're just like, you know, and you got to feel a certain kind of way, but, you know.
That makes a lot of sense. I think that you are absolutely right about where Kobe was going with that because he also said that children have become less imaginative and parents and coaches more directive. And there's some debate around if that is the method for coaching. Should we be more directive? How do we be directive but also encourage imagination? How do we get that creativity you're talking about?
I agree with what you're saying. We have to be more. The Gen Z, is that what they are? Gen Z kids. They're built different. way different. So the directive approach for a lot of them works. You find very few kids that have that. You know, you don't have to be so directive with them. They already have direction. They know what to do. But in this day and age, that's hard to come by. I have yet to cross that child. Even my own household, like I'm more directive, and the kid follows. But yeah, I mean that's the times we're living in right now with the Gen Z kids.
It's tough, man. A lot of them have low attention spans.
Mm-hmm.
Like ourselves, so we can see that in it, and we kind of think we can figure it out. But I think you just got to keep challenging them. If you can't challenge them by making the game a little bit more difficult, then you got to make the game harder and challenge them physically. And I think one's going to give, and once you give one, you can access it, and that's the fun part. Because once you can access it, you make a kid that never thought about doing one thing, he'll do something else, and then he's going to excel at it. And that's the part that gets catchy. For example, I hate giving examples, but this was about coach. I have a player, and I cannot remember what football organization plays. It might be Mustangs, and I don't want to shout out his name, but and I'm pretty sure it is. This kid is awesome. Awesome spirit. He's just like one of his teammates that asked him to come play with us one season. And he had never played basketball. He had played football. And I could tell just by his build, I was like, man, you're a football player. I could tell that. But he was agile. He was quick. He was disciplined. I don't know what. You could tell he had played with some good coaches. He was disciplined. I love it. I love those type of kids in my huddle. But I wanted to keep basketball interesting for him because I didn't want him to be like, I don't want to do this no more and go back to football or go back to something else. But I was like, dude, it's interesting. You're built to do this, and you can't do all the qualities that allow you to do everything on the court. So I don't want you to give up yet, football player, And he stuck with it. He liked it. He enjoyed it. We ended up coming down to the championship. We lost. But it was cool to see him access some of the things from football and using them in basketball. So he wanted to keep doing it. Now, regretfully, this season, last minute, positively came with this. He made his school track team. So he's not going to be able to return this particular season. But, I mean, it was cool to see him wanting to do those different things,
For us, we like the kids to play multiple sports just so the challenges stay fresh.
Yeah.
And if they did nothing but play basketball, play football, you start to run out of things to keep it exciting, and eventually they burn out. So, we always encourage our kids to play multiple sports.
And that's good. And you'd be surprised the coaches that don't. And that's selfish because, even with Coach Corey, when we talk about different things, his level of where he went in particular sports is higher than the levels I went in any of the different sports that I played. And I say that with saying that he found love in multiple different things. And you would be surprised probably where he would be motivated to even push his children. He doesn't push them like that. He pushes them to wherever their interest is. And I think as a coach, you got to kind of be willing to continue pushing them on to wherever their interest is, regardless if it's on the field or in something different. And a lot of coaches won't step up and just do that. I've seen this individual do that. You know what I mean? I've seen players in your organizations do that. And I think that's a big thing. That's something to look for, in looking for an organization and looking for your coaches.
And playing in those multiple sports, you get different perspectives that you can add to the sport that you love.
Right.
So, I was big on basketball, but I played football too. And football had a lot of things in it that helped me play basketball, run track. Like, there's so many advantages to being, doing multiple sports. And to encourage, like Coach said, that's how kids burn out fast because it's the same thing. You got to give them another look. So they're like, oh man, track is almost over. It's time for football. Can't wait. Because that's how I was as a kid. I'm like, man, it's football season. Oh, getting sick of football. Here comes basketball. Oh, basketball's over. Here comes track. So it's like each time it's like I began to miss a sport because I was in another sport. Like, man, I love track, but I'm ready for football. So it all relates to each other. Like, it's a great thing.
In today's day, though, there's so many coaches and so many sports trying to make you specialize in one sport and go the whole year with it. And now they're extending seasons, and we don't do that. And I know a bunch of us don't do that, but Ohio State's football coach just came out during the season and said that 85% of the kids that are on his college roster for football were multi-sport kids in high school. And so it's, it shows.
It makes sense, and what you just said is plain and simple. When some people are looking for what makes these players stand out, look at those characteristics. Multiple sports. That should ring a bell. If your player is playing one sport, that's it. That might be cool. It might just be what do it for them. But, like you said, the numbers and the stats speak for themselves. And I would take that to answers. A lot of people got to think about that.
Yeah, and it also helps you to find who you are as an athlete by doing that. I always encourage kids to do multiple. Just because you think, you're a basketball player, you might not be the greatest basketball player. You might be good at track, way better at track than you are at basketball. You would never know that if you box yourself in. Like Coach said, in the one specialization, you really got to get out there and see like where you belong. And a lot of kids, who come to the organization, they're always saying like, I want to go to the NBA. And that's a lottery dream. How do you know? You might be more than a basketball player. You might be a musician. You might be you could be anything, So you don't want to stay boxed in, and it's good to encourage the kids not to do that.
Well, and even with our players that do play year-round, we encourage the other sports, and we understand that because they want to keep up basketball because they're trying to reach a certain expectation or a certain standard that they see for themselves or set out there. But when they still feel encouraged that try these other activities, do these other sports, keep doing that, then they're supported so much more and can develop so much more.
Yeah, and then we're talking life skills too. In life, you just can't do one thing. You got to figure out other things that you could do in life, because once that one thing doesn't work, what do you do?
Right.
And I think we talked about that on another show. I had that issue because I'm like, oh, well, the basketball dream is done. What do I do now? And that's where I was at a place in my life where I was in a box. And I'm like, how do I get out this box? Because my whole life, I just prepared for one thing. Then I realized it's more to life. So, yeah, definitely, it's a life skill.
I agree with that.
Oh, I agree with it as well, no question. I'm a little bit older than y'all, but I've seen it a million times.
Oh, I'm sure.
I've seen it a million times.
Well, all this is making me think of something else that I was thinking about talking to you guys about today. So it's something like 62% of youth athletes nowadays are dropping out of their sport. And that same 62% are citing it's not fun anymore as the reason. So I hear through this conversation one thing that can keep it fun and keep it new is playing multiple sports, doing different things. But what else do you think is going on? Why isn't it fun anymore? Are grown-ups in the way? Is it something about our kids' lifestyles?
I think a lot of things have changed, especially during the time periods now, which we're not in particular speaking on. But I think that as the kids get older or the teen, depending on the coach they've had previously or where the parents have had that kid in that system, I think that it's based on how that coach kind of developed them a little bit to kind of like what the expectation is. Like at a certain time period, this is about to happen. I think some coaches don't. I think a lot do. I think a lot just have to say it. But if they didn't kind of prepare them and they get into a situation and this sport becomes like a different part, a different facet of the sport now that they're in, so it's like, I don't know about this. I don't like this that much. Just like at work, it's like they prepare you as best they can because work wants you to succeed. We want you to succeed in basketball. But at the same time, once you got to get into those different fitments, you just kind of endure it. I think that part isn't pushed, that you have to endure certain things that you may not necessarily want to do or even participate in. I know we deal with that now, coming back around to it because, I have my oldest son, kind of been there then, but it's been years since I had been through it. Now I'm kind of going through it now with my youngest, back when they're teens, 15-year-olds. And it's like, man, I forgot. I forgot how you guys were, how y'all talk to each other, And so I think the preparation of, you got to be ready to endure it. Some people aren't going to let you be who you think you are. Some people are going to bench you if you don't say the right thing. They don't care how good you are. They need that quality to become better. And I think some coaches don't necessarily prepare players for that aspect. So I think that becomes when they be like, oh, I don't want to do this. You know, I think,
I would just jump in and say I agree with that, but I also think that a lot of that lack of preparation is coming from the parents as well.
Sure.
And so we get
Absolutely.
that quite often, that the kids come in with false security, and then when you want to get on them a little bit, you want to try to coach them up a little bit harder. In our sport, of course, it is a little bit harder.
Absolutely.
A lot of kids in today's day, they just don't have that,
Yep.
And then I would say that a lot of them don't have a mother and a father at the home, so I don't only blame parents, but it's a little tougher, and so they're looking for you to be the dad they think that they're looking for, and if you're not handling them that way, then that's an easy spot to say this isn't for me, and so we try to work with the parents as well. And of course, those parents don't want to hear it, but
Of course.
but they have to hear it in my program, so they don't have a choice.
Yeah.
But that's an ever going battle. We battle with that quite often. Something's going on at home, something's going on at home, and eventually, when you can find out, then it's a little bit easier to work with.
True. So you think, you get a player that loses interest. Should it start with the parents?
For me, because it's tackle football, when a kid starts to lose interest, he's also getting beat up out there, and so then we want to address with the kid what's going on, and it's really in his mind, whether it's accurate or not accurate. And my son plays college football, but he was thinking about not playing, which he's not playing, but in his mind he was under so much pressure. And I'm under so much pressure, and it's a longer story we won't get into, but he's under so much pressure, and so he's talking to the coach, and the coach is saying, "Son, you're not under pressure.
Right.
We're not putting pressure. You're a freshman. We're not looking for you to play." But in Brandon's mind, he feels the pressure,
Right.
and so we have a guy that's speaking to him, a counselor, and when I spoke to the counselor, he said he's under so much pressure, and I said, "No, Aaron, he's not under pressure." He goes, he thinks he's under pressure, which means he is under pressure. He said, have you and your wife ever talked about, does she feel some kind of way? And I said, well, yeah. And I said, but it's not accurate. He goes, no, it is accurate, because her feelings are how she feels, and you can't tell her how she should feel. And I had to sit back and think about that for a little while. I said, wow. And he said, so Brandon's the same way. That's how he feels. So until we can get him to understand that that's not really how it is,
Right.
That's how he feels.
Right.
And there's nothing you can say until he understands that.
It's a mental block.
It's absolutely
Perception is reality.
sure. And so it's and we see a lot of that with the kids as well. And so we just try to stay on them and on them and on them until they can find that joy. But if they can't find the joy, then it's just not a good sport for them. Not today.
Right.
Not today.
I can agree with that. I can see that,
Um,
especially in tackle.
yeah,
Sure.
for sure, tackling especially. I think it's three individuals that is making that number so high: PlayStation, Xbox, and the Nintendo Switch. These kids love playing the video game more than ever before. Of course, us as though we play 2K for recreation. I mean, 2K is such a simulation of them going outside playing on the blacktop. And I watch my son play, and it's like his friends, they get on the game and they all go to the blacktop virtually. I'm like, why don't you guys go outside and do that?
Right.
So I'm really thinking that the video games is having a lot to do with it too, because the kids are not in the lab working. A lot of kids just want to sit and twiddle their thumbs all day in front of the TV. And on top of that, the parents is another thing too. Some of these parents are telling their kids, hey, you're going to go into this program, you're going to be the best player in this program. They're lying to their kids, and that's the big no-no, because your kid's going to go into the situation with expectations like this, and the coach is going to be like, no, that's not my expectation, that's your parents. Well, my dad said, and it's hard to tell a kid not to listen to their parent,
Right.
But a lot of parents should be telling their kids, listen to the coach. You come here, work hard. That to me is missing out of a lot of parents' mouth. Instead of them saying, hey, go in here, work hard, and whatever happens, they're telling their kids, you're the best player on this team.
Yeah.
You're the best player. And the coach should be playing you this amount of minutes. Did you earn that? Are you going out there? It starts at home, because whatever you speak to your kids, it resonates to them. If you say you're the best player on the floor, on the field, guess what the kid thinks? I'm the best player on the field. And if a coach says, no, you're not, they're like, yes, I am. No, you're not. You need work. You need to do some work, son. No, I don't. My dad said that It starts at home.
So directly to what you're saying and to what Coach Bruce was saying, earlier we were talking about Kobe Bryant's coaching philosophies, but long before that, his father is very famous for saying to him, "I don't care if you score 0 or 60, I still love you." What do you think that did for him? What does that do for kids when they have that kind of talk at home?
Well, Kobe was different. In the documentary, he said he didn't like that. He said he was like, I had 0 points. I sucked. So it drove him in a different direction because it drove him to work hard. But for some kids, that means the world to them.
But maybe Kobe was able to do that because he had the safety of knowing that he wasn't failing in his dad's mind, even though it was in his own mind.
Because that means a lot. As a kid, if you're failing your parents, that means a whole lot. Especially if you're the son of a coach. That's the biggest thing. You're looking like, how did I do? And us as coaches are like, oh, you did all right. Could have did this and this better, but and sometimes that can create this mental. There's pressure, but all the people that's listening, the kids should never look at you. Got to break it down to the kids so they understand. I do it to my son all the time. Look, I don't care if you go out and play a bad game. I'm never going to tell you you're playing great ever, because there's always room for improvement. The very moment I tell you you're great, now you think, oh, I don't need to work hard. No, you need to work. I give him a sense of reality. Like, while you're on the video game, it's a kid out in the driveway getting shots up, and he's getting better than you. And you're going to meet him. You're going to meet him in the game. And guess what? He's going to bust your tail. It's like you still have to be honest with the kids of where they are, but you just don't want to push it down their throat so hard that they tap out. That's the hardest thing and all parents struggle. That's hard because we want our kids to succeed.
Yeah.
We want them, especially as a coach, I want my son to play like I'm trying to make everybody else play.
Well, not to cut you off, I think another piece that we kind of like, the world's crazy.
It is.
I'm not going to pass judgment. The world's a great place. It's beautiful. Now I said a couple truths. I'll say another couple other truths. It can also be tough. And you also deal with people who can be very unforgiving. And as parents, and when you get successful and you get a little bit more accomplished, you've had to go through things to get to that point. And you try to shield your child, and you try to give them a little space because they're going to get that. They're going to get the world. So I think a lot of parents, that's why they're quick to say you're great, you're good, you're great. Because I think they're trying to scream the pieces that they can get out of them because they know that they just ain't going to be a block or everything. And I'm not saying that's what they need to do. I think that's where that energy comes from. I know you feel it, before I coached, even when I was coaching, anytime I watched my son, I would me personally, just be happy to watch him. That's just me. I've never been the type of dad that's been like, oh, you're good and coddling, but I've also, while watching my son, watched other players and parents and how they conducted and how they treated the kids, and I've seen it. I've never once thought that's a horrible thing. I think that's where it comes from, and I sometimes I wonder, how do you fix that? Because it seems like that's not good. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like, how do you fix it?
It's that understanding. Like, if I see a parent ripping into a kid, to try to get them to do something they can't do. Because, you hear parents all the time say, well, I could do that. Why can't you do that? If I see a parent doing that right away, I'm like, because he's not you. Like, what are you teaching him to be, like you or to be himself? Right. That's the difference. And that's where that pressure starts to mount for kids, because the parents are thinking, I used to do that. You should be able to do that. Once you speak that into your child's life, pressure starts to build automatically.
That's true.
It starts to build.
But it's so tough because it's a double-sided sword, though, because I'm going to tell you without a lie, I only care if my son good at something. He ain't got to be exposed to it. I'm going to be like, man, you should be good at that. Just being honest. Be like, yo, you should be good at that. Hey, go cut that lawn. What type of lawnmower is this? I don't know. It's super brand new, state of the art. Just put it together. You should be able to put it together. I'm kind of like that to him. You know what I mean? Only because I know when he goes to school, certain classes, the expectation level is going to be you should be able to do it. And they're not going to be so encouraging, and they're going to have to deal with that. It ain't right. They're going to have to, though. They're going to have a teacher that's going to say, do this assignment, and they're going to get graded, and it might come down to a parent's talking to the teacher about the grade, saying, "How come my child got that?" Teacher might respond, "Your child should know that. He learned it in the third grade. They had to know that to move on. How come you're not reentering it?" You know what I mean? They might go that route on you. So I think I can't. It's tough. It's double sided. It's double sided.
Yeah, but I look at it like this, and you brought up the lawnmower. I feel like, and this is my philosophy, you have to put the lawnmower together wrong in order to understand how to put it together. I'd rather see my kid put it together wrong and teach them, nope, you didn't do this, you didn't do that. So later on, they know how to do it. You know, and that's what I'm saying with sports. You have to have that mindset with your child. It takes work to get to a certain level. It takes a certain amount of failure to get a certain amount of success. You know, so that has to be driven in a child's head just as much as you can do that, you know, but still you have to give them that realistic understanding that it takes time. It takes work, you know, and that's what I'm big on. That's why when I hear parents say, "You should be able to do that." No, you can do that. He can't do that. His learning curve might not be as quick as you think it is. It may take some time, but once he gets it, he's got it. He's good to go.
And I think it's all about progression.
It
You
is.
know, a third grader can't do what a fifth grader does, and a
Yep.
seventh grader. Certainly, we want to coach up our kids to be able to do a little bit more, but I still think it's about progression. And you know, we debate on passing trees and so on and so forth. And you know, some of the high school coaches think my fifth graders need to know what a passing tree is, which is the pass routes that are known throughout the NFL. And I always say my third graders don't learn geometry. You know, they're learning how to multiply and
Right.
subtract and that kind of thing. And so in progression, by the time he gets to seventh grade or eighth grade is when that passing tree will start to come in because he needs to know it in ninth and 10th grade.
Exactly.
And so I do think it's really about progression.
Oh, for sure. You got to know the levels of progression, and I got to know if the kids are hitting the objectives in their progression to
Sure.
say, "Hey, you're ready." You know, so it's that understanding.
But as dads, we also want to try to raise that bar a little bit.
Oh,
because
for
that's
sure.
Because that's what we do.
That's what we do.
Right, absolutely. That's
That's
just
what we
kind of
do.
what you do, and you try to raise the bar and raise the bar.
Yep.
And I think our fathers probably did that to us a little
Absolutely.
bit. too.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? So
Yes.
it's one of the
They
things.
motivated. Like, and it's not like I said, these Gen Z kids, they're different. I mean, I'm telling you, they just have a different understanding, more sensitive, but it's not me trying to push you to do what I want you to do. It's me trying to get the most out of you.
Yeah.
It's hard for them to understand that.
Yeah.
They can't differentiate between that. Like, are you getting on me? No, I'm not really getting on you. I'm trying to get the most out of you. So they kind of take that in a different context.
And back in the day, in our day, I think your father worked with you a lot more than in today's day.
Yep.
That's
And,
true.
You know, we work
Absolutely.
Out, we work out at the field house, and little kids can't do stuff, and their dad opens up the door of the field house to start yelling instruction. And it's just my favorite time to walk over and said, "Sir, this isn't the time for you.
Right.
If you would work on that at home,
Right.
when I see him again, I bet he's going to know how to do it.
Right.
Let him fail out here, and that's what's happening. And he's going to feel it a certain way, but that happens every session.
Oh yeah. I'm sure.
I like that long fail out here. I like
Yeah,
that.
let
Yeah,
him
they're
fail.
going to fail out here, and it doesn't really matter if they fail out here today. Go teach him, so when he comes back, it'll be a little bit easier for him, and then he can gain some success.
If we could get parents on that page of reiterating what the coach is implementing, the world would be a great place.
Oh yeah.
The world would be a
Oh,
great
yeah.
place. In a perfect world.
I think if you thought about it on your basketball team, how many kids do you have trouble with, and then how many parents do you have trouble with?
Okay.
Right.
And so if you could leave the parents out, the kids would do anything you want
They
them
would
to
do great.
But that's not real world today.
No, it's not.
You know, what you just said was a conversation me and my wife had earlier. I won't go into it, but it was just it was so the parents get in the way. Not the parents, not the adults. Adults, not the parents. I'm very wrong in saying that. Adults can really get in the way. You know, adults can really mislead. They can chastise, and it's like it's up to the parents and the coaches to direct them accordingly, so those things aren't issues. You know, that's true.
But then I'll jump in real quick and say that in some programs, you know, the coaches still don't know what they're doing. So if you put your child in a program where they don't know what they're doing, then how do you expect it to be good? It's not going to be good.
Sure.
That doesn't give you the right to come in and get in the way, but I think you have to be a little more selective. And, you know, I got 11 teams in my program, and I spend more time than anyone trying to make sure I have the right coaches.
Right. Have to.
And I know I don't have all the right coaches, and then it always shows. And at the end of the day, though, I got to have coaches, and so we try to coach up the coaches. And you know,
true.
we'll get ready to play spring football or do our spring football, and half of that's going to be my better coaches coaching up my weaker coaches,
Right.
to then be able to coach up the kids. So it's tougher.
And that's a progression too, and within coaching, and that's amazing too, because you yourself know it just as much as anyone else at this table. How you start at one point, you progress. You have some coaches that might be there at the same time, maybe under or even ahead, and it's all progression how you go. And sometimes, if the coaches would continue to just understand that progression, I think that kind of helps. But I think that kind of goes another route, and that's what makes it a little bit difficult. Because I think those coaches that aren't as good it's just that's the point where it gets like there. You know what I mean? Like it's just you just continue doing like you've been doing, you've been fine. You would have been where you needed to be, but you're kind of falling short because you're getting caught up in something.
But we've already heard, get back to the lab, and we use that phrase all the time with the kids as well as the coaches.
Yeah.
I mean, it's imperative, and so when the coaches are putting more time in the lab than the kids are, we know there's a disconnect as well.
Disconnect for sure.
So I hear everybody talking about progress and growth, and that says a lot about you all as individuals. And when you come from a place of focusing on the growth and focusing on the process and not the results, what you're really doing is you're thinking strategically. You're thinking, this child could be this. So for each of you, where do you think that type of strategic thinking comes from?
Well, and I'll just jump in and say that very, very rarely under 13 do I think would I ever say a child could be anything. I don't want to put boundaries. I don't want to put ceilings. I think at 12 years old, they can be anything they want to be if they continue to work. And so I think that thought process came from my dad, who's done it a million years, and I'm trying to put it on my kid, but we also do it with my coaches as well. We want to coach them up to be the greatest they could be that day, and then at some point they'll move on, and then hopefully the next coach, which is normally their high school coach, can then take them and progress them to some other level if that's what they want to do. And a lot of kids don't want to do that. They only want to go to whatever, Pop Warner or high school, whatever level it is. But if there's any of them that have the desire, it starts to come out, that they would have an opportunity to go higher and higher.
I think Coach hit it on there. He kind of killed it because it's like it's 13 and under. It's hard to say what a kid is. It's very hard to say what they can be because they're developing. They're in development stage. I just think you just push the kids as best you can. That's the best thing you can do, and try to bring the most out of them. Like you said, once they get to high school, you will hope as a coach that you prepare them for the next level. But yeah, 13 and under, that's just tough to say. He could be the next Michael Jordan or Barry Sanders. It's tough. It's just you got to take the skill set that they have and just enhance it. That's the best thing you can do.
Definitely agree. I mean, both of you guys bring up great points, and I totally agree with both. Actually, it's that simply put it.
Yeah.
So I hear Bruce mentioning his father. What mentors did each of you have that in your youth or in your development as people, as coaches, what mentors did you have to help you get to where you are today?
I had a good mentor growing up. His name Bo Flowers. He was my football coach, and he made me play football my freshman year. He just said, I thought I was a basketball player. He said, no, you playing football. And I'm like, no, I'm not. He said, yes, you are. Because he said, I got connections in the school, and you won't play basketball if you don't play football. And my senior year, I asked him, I said, Bo, why did you make me play football? He said, man, because you were only seeing things from a basketball perspective. You need to see that you had other talents, and you were also a good football player. He said, had I not made you come in and play football, you would have never knew that. And I'm thinking like, wow, that's powerful. How did he? And he just chose me to do that. But plus, he was good at teaching us how sports related to life. Every time we had practice, at the end of practice, after games, he was always giving us a speech about life. My senior year, we were predicted to win the state championship, and we lost in the second round. And the first thing he said, in life, man, sometimes there's things that you think you're supposed to do, but you're really doing what you're supposed to do. He said, hey, we had a great season. We broke a lot of records, but at the same time, life is the same way. It's things that you may expect to have a result, they may not. That doesn't mean you drop your head. That means you keep moving forward. So every time he always and he would always call my mom and come get me and say, hey, come on, let's work. And he would I used to hate it. It sucked. But the person I became because he did that, I loved him for it. So I was lucky to have somebody who just took me under their wing. Like that's rare for a lot of kids, but I had somebody that did that for me.
For me, it would have been a group of elder black men, including my father, but I'll speak on those men. I used to belong to a auxiliary search and rescue organization called CAP, and it was out of Norfolk, Virginia. It was actually founded and ran by two founding Tuskegee Airmen, Commander Ross and General Pretlow. And just hearing their stories and just looking at the actual facts and the history that they went through, some of the things that some African Americans had to go through in this country that we do live in, this great country that we live in, and along with a lot of different races, but the firsthand knowledge and sitting here listening to decisions they had to make despite the outcome, just thinking about, like, I remember one time Commander Pretlow General Pretlow had gave us a story about when he was just a young man just getting enlisted, just how he was treated, how he had to deal with certain things, and the time to speak up and the time not to, and what it meant, what it meant to have, just the effects of it. And these were older men that Commander Ross lived to a ripe age. I think he might have passed like in his 80s. But just to be around a man that was actually one of the originals, Tuskegee Airmen, that actually lived that life to be it changes you when you can actually hear that verbiage out that man's mouth. I'm around these people and going through it. So those people kind of impacted me somewhat, and inspired me somewhat.
Obviously, my dad was, and still is, because he's still alive at 90 years old. And I listen to you, and I hear you talk about, the airmen, the Tuskegee Airmen and stuff. I was born and raised Jewish, but it never really came into play. And really, in the last year, and I talk to my father every night, and recently he's been talking about the Holocaust. And he was a young boy, and his uncle Max was in the Holocaust, and he's telling all these stories. And the Myers guy just had some kind of slur from the Miami Heat. And,
Myers Leonard.
Yeah,
right, Myers Leonard. And I'm 57 years old, and I never quite pieced it all together. Really, I just never quite pieced it together. And I'm listening to my dad tell me these stories, and it kind of hit home. And I'm like, wow, okay. He walked a little different life than I did. And certainly we're always talking about Black Lives Matter. We coach a lot of black kids, and we're trying to make sure or we think we're moving in the right direction, but you never really know. And then when he kind of dropped some of the Holocaust and the Nazi stuff, and I'm going, wow, I'm 57. I just never really knew. And he's got a lot of pain from that, and all the people that died that were his relatives, and I just never knew. I just never knew, and maybe that's because I'm shallow and I never paid attention, or maybe he only shared that with my older brothers. I don't know, but it's kind of unique. It's unique listening to it, that it just never hit me. Really, it was within the last 3 months that we've been having a lot of conversation about it. So it's obviously something on his mind at 90 that he wanted to share. And so I'm listening. I'm learning. So I'm still learning.
And you never felt it either.
I never did.
Right.
No.
That's good.
No.
Yeah.
Nope. I just never. It was like that wasn't part of my life.
Right. Good.
I just never felt it, but now I do, and I kind of see it a little differently now.
It's powerful. So it can impact you like that. It's powerful.
Absolutely. Speaking of things that can impact you, all three of you are fathers. What would you say you've learned most about yourself from being a father?
Patience for me. Patience for me. I was...
Took the words right out of my mouth.
Sorry I jumped in, but...
That's the biggest word.
But my first two children were girls. And as I was growing up, I was always smaller. I was the youngest of 5 kids in my family, so I was always more aggressive. And that's just kind of how I grew up, chasing after my older brothers. And then I think that God gave me girls to try to calm me down. And really I do. And then my son came along, and he's, a big giant kid, and everybody thought he was going to be the greatest player in the world. And he liked to play, but he just wanted to play. He didn't care whether he was ever any good or not.
Right.
High school sophomore, when it finally clicked for him, And so I had to learn patience, and I allowed him to quit 1 year, and everybody told me I'm wrong, and you wouldn't let anyone else's kid quit, and this, that, and the fifth thing, and I just felt like it was the right. We talked about it a lot, and he was in my own program, and I decided to let him quit, and then ultimately in the long run, I think it was the correct way. But I wrestled with that for years.
All right.
Just am I doing it the right way? And it was patience, really, for me.
That's real, especially from a father's standpoint. I know we can all agree there's stuff that decisions we make that we really, you'd be surprised how long we tussling with it. We tussle with it. You would never know,
Yeah. Coach hit it. Any parent, any father's going to say patience, because, you have to have a lot of patience with raising kids. I got 2 boys, and both of them are different. And the biggest thing is patience and understanding. I think a lot of parents, where we make mistakes at, even I make the same mistakes at times too, understanding where your child is and how to get them where you're trying to get them to go. Like there's certain, and true parents can attest to this. There's certain times where you're in a situation where you like, what do? I know if I do this, it could lead to this. I know if I do this, it could help this. And sometimes as parents, we just simply don't make the right decision at the right time. We just think like this is the right decision now, but we don't think about. Let me rephrase that. We make decisions now for the short term and don't think about the long term effects. I really think that's something that I've really learned in parenting. Like you have to really think about the long term instead of the short term, and the short term the long term effects requires a lot of patience, because you have to be patient enough to say, all right, any day now. Any day he's going to be a man. Any day he's going to mature. Any day now, it doesn't happen. So you have to really keep motivating and keep reiterating that point to your child. I'm about to have my first teenager next month. Like that's huge. But it's still some things where I'm like, got a long way to go. Because you should be here. In my mind, I feel like that. But I'm at a place in my life where I know he's not there, and I have to be patient in where he's going, and I have to keep pushing him in that direction. I can't say, I give up, because that could have bad long-term effects on his life. And I think a lot of us parents, we just, because it can get frustrating being a parent. Some days you're just like, I quit. I done said this to you 100 times, and this is the 101 time, and I'm saying to you again.
Man, that happens to you.
All the time. It's like we're like, man, when do they wake up and understand? But that's why I'm talking about the short term feelings of, I don't think I'm ever gonna get out of this. And I think a lot of parents really get in that mind frame where they're like, this is never gonna end. They're like, this is never gonna, and that's where you start making bad decisions in the short term that has long term effects. And somebody broke that down to me, and I was like, man, that's crazy. But like Coach said, the patience is the biggest thing in parenting. The big P. It takes a lot of patience, man. It takes a lot.
And I'll jump in and just say that I talk to my 90-year-old father every night, and I put him on speakerphone so my wife can listen, and he knows he's on speakerphone, and we always recognize when he's trying to teach me something.
Right.
And it kind of makes me giggle because I'm recognizing in his 90-year-old way he's trying to teach me something. Absolutely. He doesn't come on, and he doesn't come on me hard.
Yeah.
He just slowly, methodically. I own businesses, and I got it, but he's still teaching me.
Yeah.
So and I hang up the phone, and my wife and I will talk about a little bit of what lesson he was trying to teach me whenever he's trying to teach me a lesson.
Yeah.
I'm 57, and I'm still learning. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, to be willing to learn is the biggest thing that he could have taught you. Me personally, because that's tough. Just like Coach, I got 2 sons. And, I want to say patience. I don't think I've learned the patience.
Nobody can ever say they learned it.
I'm trying, man. I'm trying to get there. I think I don't know what to call it. I don't want to say old school because that's not fair. Somebody might interpret it differently. But I'm very much like my father. And my father, he basically brought me up to think a certain way. And I think of them a certain way, and I hold them very, very high. I've held both of them higher than me since they were 6 each. I'm like, man, you're way smarter than I am since when I was 6 years old. That's how I look at it. That's how I just be honest with them. Because if I'm doing my job right, they should be. They should be. I know what Coach said. He ain't where he should be. Believe it or not, he probably is way past where you think. It's just he only letting you see what he wants you to see. You be so surprised,
Of course,
man. These kids are so
they smart.
they really are aware. They might be lacking a lot of fundamental stuff, but they're not lacking on that certain thing. But both my sons different. Like Coach said, I remember when my oldest was like, I don't really want to do this sport. And I kind of was like, man, so what you want to do? Then when he dropped it on me, I was like, shoot. Well, financially, I got you, buddy. Whatever you got to do, because he wanted to have that track life. Track life, another life. And, and I give hands down his, he definitely had his mindset to do that. And I had my mindset to support him to the best of my ability without pretending not to be able to do what I could do. And I made sure that financially I was there, if I could physically be there. But we got 2 sons. If anybody knows something about track, shoot, Friday they got to be where they got to be. And you got another child somewhere else. It's one of them things where you got to, especially at high school level. We ain't talking middle school or anything like that. But high school level, when it becomes more about the business and they really want to do it, you try not to get in their way. You try to surround them with people who can help them. You try to just make it easier on him. I remember when I made sure he didn't even have to really work. My biggest thing was school. If you're going to do the sports thing, you ain't got time to work. You ain't got time. In high school, if you're trying to go to college, which he did on a scholarship, that's, now you got to come out of pocket for certain things. That's work. You know what I mean? So I think that's one thing that I learned was that you really just got to be willing to let your children make some decisions and just kind of just be like, well, shoot, that's what you did. And just kind of just be like, all right, I ain't mad at you. That's what you do. I've learned that. Whereas before, their actions would make me mad because I would see how it would directly impact me. And I would be like, see, look what you done did. But now I kind of I reiterate what your actions are doing, whether they like it or not. And I've learned to kind of get the solace from that.
What have you learned about yourselves from coaching?
That you're still parenting. You're a coach, you're a parent. Because coaching is, some of the best coaches are some of the greatest parents. That's what I've experienced in my time as a kid and being a coach. Some of these coaches, they just have that parently spirit, man. It's like they can just take the kids and they can do stuff that some of the parents can't do, because they just have that in them. But I learned from coaching that parenting and coaching kind of is very similar, because when you're a coach, pretty much, especially like you're doing youth, you like their parent for 1 to 2 hours. You like their parent for 1 to 2 hours.
And we say that all the time. From 6 to 8, let us take control of him, and you take control of him from 8 until I see him again at 6.
Exactly.
So let us coach him and let him be the player.
Yeah. So that's one thing I learned, and you have a level of responsibility because you're affecting so many lives at that moment, and you have to carry yourself way differently than you would normally have to because you have people who look to you for, to be, they need your help, and some of these kids have so many different demons in their closet, and they come to you, Coach, I got this going on at home. What? You serious? Yeah, don't tell anybody. Like, some of these kids are going to share their darkest secrets with you, and you have to be able to be a good influence on them. And some things you're going to have to, kind of gaslit them, like, whoa, what do I do? So that's what I learned with coaching. You pretty much, it's an extension of parenting, for real.
Yeah, I think for myself, I'm still trying to learn what I'm learning from coaching. What I figured out from coaching is that you can make a lot of impact. But I've also figured out that, the word coach is a real word. If you really think about it and you're trying to do it, it's a lot of responsibility. Mm-hmm. And if I think when you're part of that real small number of people that I really feel are coaches, I think that it's a lot of work. That's one thing I learned. It's a tremendous amount of work. It's more work than your regular 9 to 5. And I don't think people get that. It's a lot of work. We live in a society where we wake up and we go to work, or you go to sleep, and then you got other people waking up and going to work on different shifts, and that's the society's outlook. But we're out here with youth. Some people are out here with adults coaching them. I mean, it's a tremendous responsibility. It's huge. It's like I can't think of anything other than taking care of your own children or someone else's children that's just as important. Unless you want to call your children not that important. And I think that we out there with your children. So it's extremely important. I think that I never knew that it had that much responsibility. And I think the decisions you make as a coach carries a lot. I think that you have to stand for certain things. And you have to be willing to stand by it and teach the kids that you're coaching those things. And other than that, I think that's what I've learned from.
I think coaching is, if they wanted to pay me, I probably wouldn't enjoy it as much. For me, it's just so much fun. It's the purest form of teaching and coaching, and it's just awesome when a kid will call you 10 years down the road, or you run into him in the street and, Coach, you remember me? And I'm struggling, I can't quite remember, and I start going, well, what year was it? And of course he knows me because I look kind of like I did 10 years ago. And they don't look anything alike, but it's so rewarding. It's probably my favorite thing to do, really. After doing it all these years, it's still just it's just so rewarding. These kids just want to learn, and if you can teach them and help them progress through sports, but also in life as well. And so it's very rewarding for me. And
speaking of rewarding, I do have not a protege, but a player that I always brought up. His name's John. I'm gonna send him your way. He wants to just get his hands in there and start working with youth. He previously did play at Tallwood, local area. Great kid. I think he went to your seminar you had recently. I don't know the date, unless you guys postponed it.
What's his last name?
Platt.
Okay, no, John Platt. I know.
So
I had a new guy showed up. His name was John Perry.
Interesting.
So,
but
I didn't know who he was, but he showed up and.
Well, I'm definitely gonna, cause he's actually a merchant seaman now. So, but I know that he's back down here, and he's a good kid. Along with some other kids. I'll shout out Troy, Devon, because we were talking about some kids that you just ran into one of my former kids. His name's Nick. For a grown man. We ran into him, and then Devon, we ran into him in the parking lot. He pulled up in a nice, beautiful Escalade. We didn't know who this person was, pulled up nice and slow. Right. You're like, come on now. But like you said, when you see him over time, you couldn't pay me enough to do it. It is a lot of fun. It's very rewarding, and those are some of the rewarding things, those things I speak of.
Real quick, I'll tell a quick story, but there's one of my former players, his name is Grant Holloway. Grant actually just broke the world record in the 60-meter hurdles, and he's a 12-time national champion of Florida, and the favorite to win the gold medal. But he was in town not this Christmas, but the Christmas before, and he was at that point an 8-time national champ. And we know his dad really well, and he called and said, "I want to see Coach Bruce and his father." Wow, would love to see you. And we met him at my dad's house, and we talked to him, and he's like the same old cool kid. And he reached in his pocket and said, "Coach said I got something for you." So at that point, my dad's 88 years old, and he gave him his SEC gold medal he had just won.
Wow. Oh, wow.
And he
that's what's
said,
up.
for all you've done for me.
Yeah.
And anyway, and my dad was, of course, so appreciative. And we talked for an hour, and he left. And Dad said, "Here, I want to give this to you because you did all the work in helping him." Because at that point, my dad was older. And I said, "No, Dad, that's yours." And every time I go over, Dad points out where that medal is, and he's never forgotten. I mean, it was only 2 years ago, but but Grant gave him his SEC gold medal.
See, that makes it worth it right there. You just dream of that day where I'm an old man, and all of a sudden I get a phone call. "Hey, Coach, where you at? Let's go to a restaurant." And that's
right.
That's you can't pay for that.
Nope.
You cannot pay for that feeling. Like that's something that, and a lot of these coaches, they do it for the money. They'll never reap the benefit of that. Because the kids like, man, we had 15 All-Americans on our team and Nike, but the coach didn't care.
Right.
But he knows, like, man, your dad cared, and he wanted to say, "Hey, thank you." I'm appreciative of that. So that's big. Can only hope for that.
And we'll be rooting for Grant to win the gold medal.
Yeah.
All right, so we're at my new favorite part of the show where I'm going to ask you, or I'm going to start 3 different sentences, and each of you will finish the sentence in a few words or less. So I'll start with Corey today.
Okay.
All right.
Don't stump me.
The difference between an individual sport and a team sport is?
Team sports, you have to work together.
Sam.
Between an individual sport and a team sport. An individual sport, I mean, it all lays on you. It begins and ends with you.
I agree with that. I think individual sports are individuals, and team sports you need to learn to be a team player.
All right. Bruce, I'll start with you for this one. Coaching is important to me because?
As it was given to me on a plaque, the difference you make in the life of a child.
Coaching is important to me because I like to utilize myself for others.
I'm going to go Coach Pearl. The impact you have on lives.
All right. And Sam, you can start this one. I want my players to know
That all my players are truly cared about and actually individually thought about.
Did I take time out of my day to make sure I prepare for them when they come?
That I've given them everything I have to make them successful.
I think that's a great place, a great ending to a really good episode. Thank you guys.
Yep.
Thank you again, Bruce, for making it back out.
It's my pleasure. It's a lot of fun.
It is.
And it also, I get in the car and it gives me a 30-minute perspective, and, I'll go over all the questions and, debate whether I answer them correctly. But I also, Corey has hit on a couple times about take away the sport, it's the difference of their life. And, we talk about that all the time.
Yeah.
Sports is an avenue to help you in life. That's really what it is. And so, that keeps, it just keeps coming back to me because it's so important.
It's very true.
So many life skills you gain in playing sports. It's ridiculous. Like I told you, my coach was like, if you come to work, if you come to the gym on time, you're late. If you're early, you're on time. I didn't understand what that meant I thought that was the stupidest thing in the world. But when you're early, you don't have to worry about, preparation, or you come early, you can prep for the day, and then right as soon as the clock hits, you're ready. If you come on time, you have no room to prepare. You can't even get your mind right. You got to go in right away and just grind. You're not ready. So I didn't understand until I became an adult.
Bill Belichick always says if you're not there 5 minutes early, you're late.
You're late.
And at New England, that's how they run their program.
Yep.
Yep, that's how he runs his program.
It's the best thing. It's discipline, man. I love it.
Well, definitely appreciate you making it out again, Corey.
Yeah.
And Ms. Allison, awesome job as usual. This has been another good episode of Coach, and we appreciate you.
Yeah.
Good job, everybody.
Oh yeah.
Thanks, it was fun.
In person.
In person's the best.
Yeah, I think so.
You can't lose with that.
But yeah, it's much better for me, for sure. Now, who's the player you're going to ask about?
Is Caleb. What's his last name?
Night. Check back and tune in regularly for new episodes of Coached, other new content, and to catch up on our extensive Titans TV library. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to get notifications.